In this video, I'm going to show you how to make these cute little Christmas coronets. They hang on your Christmas tree and you can fill them full of goodies for all your guests and for the children. They're great for people to take away just as a lovely little gift. Really quick and easy to make. Use up their scraps of fabric and the pattern is available free. So, I'm Christine of christinescrafts.com and this channel is dedicated to crafting on a budget. So you're just going to need this template, this downloadable PDF, which you can get if you look in the description below. And once you've got that, that is really all you need. So the first step is to cut out the template. It's basically our pattern that we're going to use on our fabric scraps. And you can see from the shape how simple they are to make. So once you've got your template, you simply need to get your fabric. Now it's a great idea to do this with two different fabrics, so your lining's a different one. For the one I'm making today, I am also going to use the same fabric for the lining as the outside. So I'm doubling my fabric over. But you could simply cut one out from each type of fabric you've got. So make sure you've got enough fabric that you can do the whole pattern piece and pin it to your fabric. So just take your time, pin it on. You'll see that I'm literally going to put 3 pins in here just to hold it in place. It's a simple shape, so you don't need anything more. If you're not so confident, just put a few more around the edge and it will keep it nice and steady. And then all you need to do is cut around that shape with a nice pair of sharp scissors. Now, if you're using 2 different fabrics, you're going to have to repeat this process on each fabric. If, like me, you've doubled your fabric over, once you've cut this out, you'll have all your pieces. So take your template off and you will have your pieces of fabric. So at this point, just check that you have 2 identical pieces, whether they're from the same fabric or different fabric. And then you need to think about your handle. So it's entirely up to you what you use, but I recommend a little bit of ribbon or rickrack or something similar, a nice delicate little handle. And if you're making your coronets the same size as mine, if you haven't scaled the pattern piece up or down when you printed it, I recommend 6 inches makes a nice little handle. And that's what I've used on mine. Obviously, if you want to make it shorter, you can do, or indeed longer. But 6 inches is what the size I've made mine. Once you're happy with that, the first thing to do is to attach that handle to one of your pieces. Now, if we go back to the template, it shows you where to attach your handle. So we're looking at placing the handle piece on to the pattern piece and onto your fabric piece and lining them up. So you'll see how I did that there. What you can do, of course, is put your pattern piece onto your fabric piece and mark where the handles are going with a marker pen or a bit of tailor's chalk. But what you need to be very careful of now is to make sure that when you loop that handle, you do not twist it. You want a nice smooth handle. And then the other end is going to be where the other mark is on the template. And pin that in place. You'll notice I'm putting my pins from the outside down into the shape so that I can pull them out easily when I'm sewing in a moment. So now all you need to do is get your other piece of fabric that you cut and place it right sides together, trapping that handle in between, and line them up carefully and then either pin or clip those edges together. You'll see I swap between pins and clips for whatever suits me for the seam that I'm doing. Just fasten them together and then hand sew or take them over to your sewing machine and just run along that top edge, capturing in the handle. Just be careful to pull your pins out so you don't break your needle on your sewing machine. So you can see I've sewn that there with about 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then we're going to form the actual coronet. But I recommend the first thing you do is open up the seam you've just done and press it. Now a little trick you can do here is run your fingernail along that open seam. Now I really do recommend for all your sewing that you actually take the time to go over to your ironing board and press your seams. You get a very professional finish. But if you haven't got access to an iron or you haven't got time, just run your fingernail along. And then fold your pieces together with the right sides facing. And make sure you line up that seam in the middle. You want those two ends of the seam to meet perfectly. And then for your main fabric side, you're going to run all the way down, pinning or clipping those two edges together right up to the point. And then for the lining side, you're going to do the same again. So when you're pinning or clipping, you're going all the way. But when you come to sew, you need to be very careful that on the lining half, you need to leave a gap of 2 to 3 inches so that you can turn the whole lot out in a moment. If you don't leave a gap, you're going to have a huge problem. So sew along the main half and from the point part way along the lining so that you end up with a gap in the middle there that you can turn the whole lot out through. So take it over to your machine and sew it, and then it should look like this. And you can see the gap in my stitching. Now before we try and turn it out, we're going to get rid of some of the excess fabric, because otherwise you're going to really struggle with the points. So at each point, cut off the excess fabric. Now be very careful not to get too close to your stitches because you don't want a hole. But if you leave all that on, it's going to be really difficult. I also recommend taking some of the thickness out at the end of your seams, just so you haven't got too much bulk. It just makes for a better finish. And then it's time to turn through the hole. So get the main part of your fabric and turn it all through. Now take your time on getting it through and working down to that point. You'll probably find you can work it through a long way, and then you might want to poke something down the hole like a chopstick just to get it to go out at that point. Don't put anything too sharp because you don't want to go through, but you do want to get that point. So just keep working it until you're happy with how pointed you've got it. And then you need to turn the other end through. But we're not going to bother turning the point through fully because we're never going to want it that way out. So just get it through enough that it's out of your way. And then you're going to close up the gap that you left. So you can either slip stitch that close by hand, or you can take it over to the machine and you can just run a little seam along it because it's going to be inside your coronet anyway. So once you've sewn it, that lining end is going to be pushed into the main coronet. And this is why I didn't worry about getting the point right, because it's not going to be that way out. Again, that chopstick comes in handy to poke it through. Make sure it's down, lined up nicely. Just wiggle it through with your finger, do what you need to do. And there you go. You should have a completed coronet. You should have a nice edge round the top where your lining comes to and your outer fabric comes to. And a great big hole down there that you can put lots of goodies in. So you'll see I used candy canes, but you could use any sweets or whatever you fancy. So I hope you've enjoyed watching how to make yours, and I hope you enjoy making them. So thank you for watching. Good luck with your coronets, and I hope you enjoy them on your Christmas tree. Please give me a thumbs up below if you've enjoyed, and please subscribe to see more of my videos.